Guys, I just wanted to share with you a new idea, and we called it Happy to Die. I know that sounds kind of a little bit morbid, but hopefully, if I expand on it a little bit, you'll be able to understand what it is that I mean by that. And I think maybe, if I can, I'll begin just by kind of setting the scene for you. You know, we talk about this week the most amazing thing that happens in a fight between Moses and Korach. These guys are fighting with each other. Korach sees that Moshe has a position of leadership, a position of power, and he can't stand the fact that he doesn't have it. Korach wants that for himself. He wants to be the high priest. He wants a position of leadership, and he fights for a position of leadership. Hey, Leslie, Olivia, Ilana, Zaki, nice to see you guys. You can follow or subscribe if you want to join us every week. I'd be more than happy to have you. You can join us as well for Havdalah. So, Korach attacks Moshe. His main theme is he wants leadership for himself. He wants power. And the craziest thing is that he uses the nuttiest idea in order to be able to ask for power. What does he say in order to gain power? He talks about, to all the people, he whispers in their ear sweet nothings. He tells the people, anyone who will listen, that the idea of leadership is flawed. We don't need leaders. Kind of sounds a little bit something like we heard in the Brexit debate about who needs experts, right? Who needs leaders? That was the idea. Hey, Jordan, nice to see you, Dan, right? And in this idea of not needing leaders, not needing experts, Korach decides he's going to tear down the entirety of the leadership of the Jewish people. If I can't be the leader, says Korach, then no one will. Now, that idea is fascinating, because if he wants to be a leader, if that's what motivates him, how in the world is it going to help to launch a campaign against leadership? At the end of the day, Moses will be fired. Hey, Lee, nice to see you, Joseph. Nice to see you, Dan. If at the end of the day, he's not going to be the leader, Moses is not going to be, neither is Korach. But ladies and gentlemen, I once saw the most amazing sentence. And the sentence went, when we see red, we do not see it all. The crazy thing about getting angry or getting jealous is that what happens when people get jealous is that they lose sight of what it is that they were even fighting over. How many times do you have where you notice someone and you're so angry at them, and in that moment of anger you could literally chuck everything away. You could tear down even the thing that you want, because if I'm not going to have it, nobody's going to have it. That idea, the ability to destroy even your own dreams because of anger, is something which is a fundamental flaw of the human being. And it's something that if we got hold of, would allow us to be able to make decisions in the best possible way. I'd like to share one amazing idea for you, if that's okay. I remember once I was in a synagogue up in Birmingham in the UK, and I was sharing the story about a young man who becomes a rabbi in a synagogue, and as he becomes a rabbi in the synagogue, he's given a job. He needs to perform a eulogy. Somebody's passed away. The guy is sitting there. He's dead, and the rabbi is shaking. He's never done a eulogy before. He's only 30 years old, and he stands up and dear family of the departed, and he's giving the speech, and he remembers this cousin and this uncle and this aunt, and he's calling all the people in the family, and he finally finishes the sermon, and he kind of feels good about himself. He walks out of the synagogue, head held high. He feels like he killed it. And as he's walking out, he notices that there's a man sitting in the corner absolutely crying. He runs up to the guy and he says, "Sir, I see that you're really disturbed. Did you know the person that passed away?" And the guy says, "Know him? He was my brother." The rabbi says, Are you serious? I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I mentioned the sister, the mother, the father, the kids. I didn't mention you. Nobody told me about you. And the guy says, "Rabbi, you don't need to worry. The reason why I wasn't on your list is because I wasn't even going to come to this funeral. In fact, he and I weren't close. We hadn't spoken in 40 years. And the rabbi says to the man, he says, 40 years. You didn't speak to your own brother? What possibly could he have done wrong to you that you didn't speak to him for 40 years? And the guy says, "That's why I'm crying, Rabbi. I can't even remember." I finished the story, I finished the speech, and this old man starts walking up to me with his little walker. And he's making his way really slowly up to the front of the synagogue. And he finally gets to me, and he says to me, "Rabbi, I want you to know, I didn't speak to my sister in 60 years. I was like, oh my gosh, 60 years, right? And I'm thinking it's going to be the same result as the story. He's not going to even remember. So I put myself in the story. I said, please forgive me. I know I'm a young rabbi myself, but please excuse my chutzpah. What could possibly have been so wrong that you didn't speak to her for 60 years? You didn't speak to her. And he says, Rabbi, I'll tell you. When my mother passed away, when my father died, there was only one thing I wanted from his apartment, the menorah. And she came in, she took what she wanted, then she gave everything away, cleaned the apartment out, threw everything else out. And the only thing I wanted from my father, I didn't have. How could I forgive her? This old man is looking at me with his big eyes in those big glasses. And I say to him, knowing the answer, I say to him, tell me, was the menorah made out of gold? And he says, no. I said, was it made out of diamonds? No. I said, well, what was it made out of? He says, it wasn't made out of precious, metals. It was actually made out of steel, out of metal. And I said to him, so then why are you going crazy? He goes, Rabbi, it wasn't the money. That menorah, it came to our family from my great-grandfather, from his great-grandfather from Russia. It was so much of our family history. That menorah, it wasn't about the money. It was family. And I said to him, please forgive me again, but you're going to throw away actual family for something that represents family? And the man sits there and he looks at me, and I can see in his big eyes, probably because they were magnified by the lenses, but in his big eyes, I can see his eyes welling up with tears, and he starts crying. And he says to me, Rabbi, I think I have a phone call to make. The amazing thing about anger is that we become so consumed with it, quite often we even forget what we were angry about. And the ramifications of the things that we do, we wind up tearing down much more than we needed to. Because it's not like, a sharpshooter. It's more like an atom bomb. And when Korach is so annoyed and he's so angry, he decides to do something to destroy not only what the other person has, but he destroys his own dream. Ladies and gentlemen, anger is something, jealousy is something that every single person has. And no one is suggesting that it's something you'll be able to get away from. But there are ways to be able to control your anger, to be able to make a move that you're not going to regret later. Rambam writes that a person, when he gets angry, one of the things he should do is he should speak slowly. Do you ever notice how in the conversation, people start speaking faster and faster and faster? And not only they're speaking faster, they also start raising their voices. So Rambam says, keep your voice low, measured, slowly speak. And if a person keeps himself in check, then the decisions that they make in that moment of anger are much more likely to be rational, and not ones that they're going to resent and regret later. A second thing is Korach's name gives us a hint as to something, or as to the reason why he manages to make such a colossal mistake. The word Korach in Hebrew is the same word as kerach, which means ice. If you're angry at someone, if they hurt you, and you know what, you have every right in the world to be upset, just remember one thing. Think of the whole person. Think of everything that they have done for you in the past. And when you're trying to get your point across, or when you're trying to get that thing that you're fighting for, or that you want so badly, just make sure that you do not become kerach, cold to the results of what you're saying and of what it means. I'll never forget, as a young boy, having an argument with my father about something that I wanted to wear. And I remember saying to him the cruelest things because I wanted to win the point. And young people especially, because we have a drive, I say we, but at the time it was a we. I'm no longer that young. But teenagers, 20-year-olds, there's a drive that exists within you, the drive for independence. And sometimes in the opportunity, in the striving for independence, we'll go to someone who's an authority figure and say anything we need in order to be able to get what we want. But ultimately, sometimes we get what we want, but the things that we lose in the process of getting what we want are far greater. So ask yourself, without the cold heart of a korach, of a kerach, is what I'm going to gain worth more than what I'm going to lose? Because you know what the biggest problem with anger is? In the Torah, we describe anger. It's called vayichar af. It means the flaring of the nostrils. And why do we call it that? Why don't you call anger something else? And the answer is because it's one of the things that you don't notice about people when they're angry, when they're fuming. And that is the greatest wisdom that you could impart to someone about anger. The worst part about it is the stuff that happens that you don't even notice. The thorn that you push into, the knife that you stick into somebody in that moment when you can say something. And watch people when they're angry. They're completely out of control. Their eyes kind of squint up. Their noses flare up as they give those moments, those faces of pure anger. And you don't realize that cost. The greatest thing that you lose sometimes in a moment of anger is the things that you didn't notice at that time at all. The people we love run away. The people we trust start to second guess themselves. And our employers start to wonder when they witness us lose our cool. Is that going to happen in a boardroom or when he needs to make a really important decision? Anger is punishing yourself for the sins of others. Yes, the person got you angry. Yes, they've hurt you. But when you hold that and you walk around with that, the person that gets hurt most of all is you. It's right there, but it's like poison. It's toxic. It spreads through the bloodstream. And that anger in one area, when you're in a bad mood, even somebody else comes and they say, what's the matter? You have this face on. You're just in a bad mood, and it spills out onto everything else in your life. If we could curb that, if we could act with a little bit more self-restraint, if we could think of the ramifications before we started, if we could just be a little bit slower and talk a little bit more evenly, and perhaps we'd save ourselves from the ravages of anger and of jealousy. Thank you so much for listening. You can subscribe down below or follow and let us know if this is something that you want to keep watching. We're happy to keep doing it so long as people are interested. Have an amazing, amazing Shabbat Shalom. See you for Havdalah this week. It's not Ashkenaz. It's not Sephard. It's going to be a little bit of an interesting mix. See you soon. Bye-bye.